You're now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show. How this kind of gift came about. So you talked about your childhood and obviously your dad being so successful. What was it like for you growing up? Because a lot of people think, well, if I'm born into money, that life's amazing, and actually, if I have a silver spoon in my mouth, I'll forever be fed. What was your experience like?
Yeah, it was a real dichotomy, really. It was, on one hand, we lived in this beautiful house, and my father was very, I guess he was so adventurous. He wanted to try everything, and he was so driven by money, and, he was exciting to be around on one level. But the other part of him was he was a tyrant. I lived in a house which was two very volatile human beings, my stepmother and my father, who fought all the time, and it was, there wasn't a day that wasn't the case, and I was in this volatility constantly, and I had to survive that. And I think the most important thing for me was that I still loved these two human beings, even though my stepmother in particular was incredibly scary. I think I had a very wise head on young shoulders and understood at some level she was still a mother. So because I had a half brother who was very young, and she couldn't cope, and I had this level of empathy about me as a young child, which was, well, I've got to take over. You're not grown up enough to do this. So somebody's got to look after your son. Somebody's got to look after this house. And I realized that I was starting to please adults more so when I took over the roles that they couldn't cope with. And so I think that's one of the things that was my avenue into people pleasing, and wanting to do service. But it was an incredibly challenging upbringing, and there wasn't a day where I thought, I might not be here. That was the case most days.
Wow, wow. And when you say, that you had to become the mum, if you will, or you had to become the adult, what was happening in that world for you to feel like you had to step into that role?
Well, I realised that they were both antagonizing each other, I guess you could say. My father would come home, and if the house wasn't clean, there wasn't food on the table, if there wasn't, the paperwork done, then there would be an almighty row, and there would be fighting and furniture thrown and punching and kicking and screaming, and then we would hide. I would have to try to protect my siblings because, in the end, I had two other, two sisters as well. So there were 3 younger children in the household, all witnessing this. So I was the only one that actually got abused, but I still felt that I had to protect them from the emotional and the mental abuse that was going on. So I would try to do anything to appease what was going on, to try to, stop most of the violence that was going on, which was never going. It was just just taking the edge off. It never really did much, but at least I was doing something to help them.
Wow. How did you kind of overcome that, and what did you do in the moment to get through it?
I think I still feel there is a stigma. There's still quite a stigma, especially when people judge and think it only happens to certain types of people, and why didn't you leave him? You knew that this was coming, and I've still had it. I still have it. I still have it with my friends. This time, do you think you'll learn from this? And it's very naive when people don't really understand the level of abuse out there. And I think in the UK alone, I think about 2 out of 4 women, maybe I've got that wrong, it might be 1 in 4 women suffer abuse at one point in their lifetime. So it's not something that's, just for certain people. And I think what I've tried to do is, rather than hide from it, which I did initially and didn't want to take ownership for it, or didn't want to, I guess, share that with people because of the shame of it, eventually, when I started to share it, I found that people were more accepting of me and what I do. And then they could hold on to something and realize that they could actually make changes too. So I've been very open with my work and what I talk about and how I share this, because I feel that if we are more transparent in this world, then that's how we shine that light on the darkest recesses in life where all this abuse hangs out.
Yeah. And I think if we don't talk about it, we're also adding fuel to the fire almost, you know, if we're too ashamed to, I've not experienced physical abuse, but I've experienced mental and emotional abuse. And I think when we are almost belittled to a point where we don't know if we can talk about it, because there's that confidence piece, isn't there? There's that, you know, no one's going to listen to me and everyone's going to think I'm crazy. And like you say, but it makes sense. Why didn't you leave? Why did you put up with it? And I think actually those judgments make us stay smaller and stay quieter.
They do. When I, as a young adult, I didn't understand. I thought because I'd left my home and I was free at last after 14 odd years, I would have a fantastic life. But I went from one disastrous relationship after another, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting the help. I just assumed that authority figures would help me, and it was very, very difficult in those days. So I also went through the worst kind of challenges in those scenarios, in those coercively controlling relationships where I reached out for help, and then I was told I was ridiculous, or well, we haven't got any evidence. What can we do about it? Well, you just have to leave. What else can we do? And it was that kind of attitude which made me feel not heard. So I guess in the end, it drove me to become a voice for those people who don't know. And it's still, even though there's so much more help out there, people do not know where to go, how to get the help, and how to start. And leaving is not just a one stop shop. It is a process, and women and men can go through years of rehabilitation and life change before they actually rid themselves of what attracted it in the first.